My name is Louise. I am a white woman, blondish, tallish. I'm wearing a lilac jacket and a black skirt, an outfit which I hugely regret because it's much colder than I thought it would be today. So looking forward to the journey home. And I am thrilled to be here today and to talk to you about ageism. And specifically about ageism and how this then, over time, becomes self-ageism and the impact that this has on our self-care and on our health. And then I'll touch on what we as Haleon are doing to address this. But before I start, I'll get into it, let me just tell you a bit of a story. It's not a very deep story, but it is a story about me. So I'm essentially in about the middle of my life, probably, if I'm lucky and I have no illness or injury. I'm pretty fit, pretty healthy, eat pretty well, have a few vices, which we won't talk about. And about once a year, I go on a kind of weekend break with my girlfriends, and perhaps many of you do that, and we do something different every year. And 2 years ago, I think, two maybe 3 years ago, we were kind of talking, what should we do? And we decided to go on this weekend break where we wanted to go hiking, kayaking, and coast-steering. For those of you that don't know, that's when you kind of climb up little cliff things and jump into the ocean. So I was telling my mother this. She's like, oh, Lou, aren't you a bit old for that? And I was like, oh, am I? And the funny thing is, she said it, and she was like, yeah, you need to really watch what you do. As you get older, you shouldn't really be doing things like that. And I found myself worrying about it for a few days, and actually, we almost didn't do the trip. And then in the end, I thought, no, that's ridiculous, which of course it was. And we went, and we had a great time. But it got me thinking about the fact that, essentially, in reality, we think these things all the time. We think things like, oh, am I getting too old now to go to that bar? Or am I too old to wear this slightly too short skirt? Or am I too old to go on that bike ride? And actually, for most of us, no matter what age we are, that is not the case. In reality, most of us can do most things into our later years. But the reason we ask these questions is not actually about capability. It's just a sign of how endemic ageism is within all of us. So this is interesting, right? And it's even more interesting for me in my role at Haleon. And this conversation with my mother led me to talk to our social impact director at Haleon, very brilliant woman called Vicky, in the office. And she said, Lou, you've got to read this book by Dr. Becky Levy. It's called Breaking the Age Code. It's a brilliant book. If anyone here hasn't read it, I suggest that you do. It will actually change how you think about your life, or at least read the synopsis. And in her book, she talks about and states that one of the single most important factors in determining our longevity, or how long we live, which is more important than gender, income, social background, loneliness, or functional health, is how we feel about aging. So I'm just going to say that again, because there's been a lot of talk today about a lot of very important issues. But the single most important factor in determining your longevity is how you think about aging and how you think about getting older. And I'll quote from her book here. She says, for better or for worse, the images that are the product of our cultural diets become the script that we end up acting out. And in fact, she's a professor at Yale. She goes out to prove that our age beliefs can in fact steal or add nearly 8 years to your life expectancy. So just how you feel about aging will add or detract 8 years to your life expectancy. And she talks about the fact that this is because from a very young age, we start to think and we start to become ageist. We start to get preconceptions about what it is to be older. And this isn't surprising. Negative age beliefs are everywhere. They show up in everything. In fact, shockingly, ageism is so widespread that the WHO can confidently report that 1 in 2 adults are ageist. And that might not sound like that much, because it probably is everybody, but in reality, that's 1 out of 2 people are actually actively ageist enough that you can collect that in a statistical analysis. They will admit to these things, which is massive. 94% of US people aged over 60 have experienced ageism. So ageism is everywhere, it's all around us, and we will all experience ageism in our lives. So coming back to Becca Levy in her book, she talks about the fact that negative age beliefs are everywhere, and over time they become internalized. So they become unconscious, it just becomes how you think about things. And as you get older, they get more important, they increase in power. And here she talks to the fact that, I don't know, say you're 25 or 35 or 45, and you go home, you put your car keys down, and you forget where you've put them. You don't think anything of it, right? You just think, oh, and you look for them, you maybe shout your husband, shout your kids, you find them, you go off on your day. But if that happens to you when you're 60, 65, 70, you instantly start to think, or a lot of people instantly start to think, oh my God, this is a sign. I must be getting dementia. I'm losing my mind. I'm losing my marbles. And 99% of the time, that is not the case. In reality, most people have good cognitive ability and good health right up until their very late years. And not only will you probably think it, but probably your husband or your wife will say, oh no, it's a sign they're getting dementia. So it's everywhere, and it gets more important to us as we get older. And this means that ultimately, how we think about aging impacts our health, she says, in 3 ways. First of all, psychologically. All of these things impact our self-esteem and shape our thoughts about what we can and can't do. Secondly, biologically. Literally, if you're stressed about getting older and you're stressed about ageism, you will increase your cortisol levels and your stress markers. And at higher levels, these actually do lead to negative outcomes. And finally, and most interesting for me in my role, behaviorally. So this is the fact that as we get older, negative age beliefs literally will cause us to stop taking good care of ourselves, to stop us looking and managing our self-care effectively. This could be anything from stopping taking medication, stopping taking vitamins, because what's the point? Too old anyway. Not maybe looking after our teeth as well as we did before, because a lot of people think it's almost fatalistically, well, my teeth are going to fall out, so what's the point? Which actually means that their teeth do fall out, which means that then they get malnutrition and other issues. But Dr. Leafy also found that with some effort, we can change preconceptions and we can change this picture. So at Haleon, we got thinking, well, we should try and do something about this. We should try and support older adults to care for themselves and to self-care better for longer. And part of the reason for that is because we're a company that has a purpose. Here you can see some of the brands we make, in case you didn't know who we were. And our purpose is to deliver better everyday health with humanity, which means we want to try and understand and improve the health of every consumer, no matter who they are. And older adults are a big part of that, right? But I'm not allowed to do anything if it doesn't make sense commercially. We are still a business, and it really, really does. So older adults are hugely important to our business and actually to the economy, and probably to most of your businesses as well. 15% of the global population today are over 60. And they actually represent 30% of global spending power. So a huge audience with a huge amount of spending power, a huge amount of money, hugely important. And that 30% is due to grow, according to Euromonitor, by 133% between now and 2040. So a growing audience. And yet, and interestingly, we haven't talked about this much today, advertising, industry in general, ignores them. According to CreativeX, and I know we saw a slightly different number earlier, only 4% of characters in ads were over 60 in 2023, and in 2024 that dropped to 1.4%. And that's perhaps because, as advertisers, as marketeers, we're also biased. We think maybe, I don't know, they're over 60, they're frugal, they won't change, they're tech adverse, they'll put other people off. It's an audience that we ignore and we don't talk to. So at Haleon, what did we decide to do? When we think about empowering any audience to better self-care, I will think across 3 lenses. So first of all, our products. Second of all, how research, education, supporting healthcare professionals can help. And finally, through communications. So just going to really power through some examples, because I don't think I've got much time. From a product perspective, we are constantly looking to make our products and our packaging as accessible as possible. And especially for older adults, this is very important because, as I talked about, they may be slightly less inclined towards self-care behaviors, and sometimes they do have some physical challenges. So some examples of some product things that we've done, just quickly. Otrivin, we have launched our new nasal mist, and you can see here it has a big button, which is basically easier for people with dexterity issues to use. On Voltaren, which is one of our pain relief brands, we have easy open cap, flick cap, and we also have a partnership that we put in place with Microsoft with their Seeing AI app to help people that are visually impaired be better able to access our product information. From a kind of health literacy perspective, which is about teaching people how to better manage their health, Our Caltrate brand in China, which is essentially a calcium vitamin, a calcium supplement. We've done some really great work there. In China, we see that 50% of women over 65 actually suffer from osteoporosis, which is a condition that's manageable if you have the correct calcium levels. So we've worked with the Chinese government there in a interestingly named Bone Up campaign to conduct 186,000 free bone tests in China to help people help manage appropriately this condition. We also recognize the critical role that government and healthcare professionals play in this space in terms of empowering people to live longer and have better self-care. So we do a number of things. We have a partnership that we support, the Economist Impact, which we've been running for 3 years. It's a health inclusivity index, which is a study that looks across 40 different countries around the world. And this year we are, today, in fact, releasing phase 3, where we have a number of different studies into the cost impact of health exclusion, some of which cover off this aging audience. You can see a bit of an example there. We've also done a number of white papers for healthcare professionals in this space, and one which we launched just last week is for dentists to promote age-friendly care practices, and we also do some healthcare professional-specific campaigns, like this one, which I'm not going to play because I don't have time, from Centrum, which is a multivitamin brand that we make, and we have a product, a multivitamin product, that essentially means that it improves your cognitive brain function for those over 50. And then finally, communications, so the last bucket. So I wanted to create a purpose-focused marketing, cross-brand marketing campaign from Haleon to help older adults think and feel more positively about growing older, and to empower them to improve their everyday health, to help counter their negative age beliefs, and actually to make people in general feel more positive about getting older. So the campaign is called Life On, as you can see here, and it's deliberately was created to paint a positive picture and an achievable view on what it is to get older. In our initial, so we've launched in CEE, in our initial feedback, consumers are really engaging with this campaign, and in our pre-research. And there's a very overarching sense that no one is really doing this. Very few companies are in this space. And when there is work in this space, it tends to be from great work, but from NGOs, which is very focused on talking to the negative sides of getting older and then trying to combat those. And actually, consumers didn't really want to see that from us. They didn't want to see us trying to do that, and actually they felt that it was just reinforcing negative stereotypes. So they wanted to see something positive, and they wanted to hear something positive. So I'm now going to play you the 60-second film. She says.
Thinking negatively about aging can shorten your life by 7.5 years. Too often we tell ourselves we're too old for things. But what if we chose to live life without limits? At Haleon, we help you to say yes to living life on at any age. Because when we take care of our health, nurture our minds, stay social, and enjoy life, we realize age isn't stopping us, our attitudes are. So let's reclaim those 7.5 years. Every single one. Let's turn ageism off and life on.
Thanks. And this campaign, that was the kind of longer film. We also have done a number of product-specific social assets to do that really important piece that we've heard about a few times, which is drive a commercial impact. We have shopper point-of-sale materials, and we are also partnering with local NGOs and healthcare professionals. So the last thing, because I know I'm out of time, we're a big advertiser, actually. We have a lot of big brands, and if we really wanted to champion healthcare and make it more inclusive and more accessible, not just for older adults, actually, but for everyone, then we also wanted to look not just at one single campaign, but across our entire suite of body of assets that we create. And we've made really good progress here. So the end of last year, we launched our new AI-powered health inclusivity screening tool. This is designed to help us set a new standard for inclusive advertising in the consumer healthcare sector. We did it with CreativeX, and it allows us to measure and enhance inclusivity and diversity across all of our digital advertising. We make thousands and thousands of assets, so it's a really quick way for us to review all the assets that we have for a single brand, or we hope to roll this out over time, and to see where we're standing on this inclusion and representation piece. So I'm just going to play a 1-minute video, and then I'm basically
Introducing the Health Inclusivity Screener, a first-of-its-kind AI-powered system. More than 1,500 separate executions were screened against 28 different data points. We verified whether text and audio were fully enabled, noted diversity in gender, skin tone, and age, and ensured simple text and voice messaging were present. It was the first time it all was assessed in one single effort. The learnings are shaping new Panadol ads, ensuring they hit the target with improved recall, comprehension, and engagement. Other brands are now adopting the tool, and that means more understanding and more truly inclusive healthcare communication.
When we take on these barriers, we enable more people to self-care, to look after themselves, to understand their condition and how best to address it. If people understand, then they have a chance of taking action.
We measured the barriers, and now we are breaking them down, quickly, at scale, and repeatably. Join us on this journey.
And we've started with Panadol, we're rolling that out, and just to say, we also have our Act with Humanity program, so we are committed to making sure that all of our assets are inclusive, so we have closed captions and audio descriptions on all of our creative and advertising around the world, which I have to say has been a massive undertaking, and we're not quite there, but we're on the journey. So just to close, let me just remind you of what I shared at the beginning. 1 out of 2 of us are ageist, openly ageist, and negative age beliefs can steal or add 7.5 years to your life. But if we change the preconceptions about aging and the way older people are portrayed and shown, we can all of us here today, play a role in improving that picture. So I hope you got some sense of the scale and impact that we're trying to do here at Haleon, but we are just getting started, and for there to be real progress will require collaboration and consensus across multiple stakeholders, so policymakers, healthcare professionals, academics, consumers, and of course, industry. So I encourage all of you to read the book and to think about what you and your company can do to help us all live healthier, happier lives for longer. Thank you.